Good evening and welcome. I'm Sheila Balgobin and I am the Dream Decipherer, and I help you to crack the code of your sleep and dreams so you can sleep sound and dream deep. This evening, was taking a look through my archives of work that I've done with clients, and I found an old um, case study, and it was evokes the dreams the dreamer was having evokes new situations but brought up old nightmares. And so to have a look at that, something a little bit different. Now, the dreamer had mentioned that she had had these recurrent dreams since childhood, and it suddenly returned in the last few months, recently. But what the recurrent dream was that the world was being flooded in some way, and her school was being inundated, and there was a tsunami that came and just literally submerged everything, and she would observe this happening. Now, this dream happened to return along with some new dreams, but this it harked back to this old dream. But she always had dreams of being attacked, of being chased, of being harmed in some way. But she had a couple of current dreams, like I said, which were triggered by the return of this old dream, this old recurrent dream. The first of them was that the dreamer was driving a car and suddenly on a different road, and didn't know which way to go, whether to turn back or to take what's appeared to be a shortcut. Now, she decided to take the shortcut and ended up at the edge of a cliff, with the lights of the city far below her. The car started to fall over the cliff, and the dreamer was preoccupied with a child who was sitting in the back seat, trying to comfort it and to protect it as best as she could. However, um, the car didn't actually crash in the dream, but the moon appeared much larger than normal. So that's the first dream that was triggered by this old recurrent dream. Another dream that disturbed the dreamer quite badly was that she had the sensation of being attacked or even raped by a figure that was almost demon-like, who really wanted her and wanted to try to manage her and control her. He also wanted to be intimate with her, have sex with her, but couldn't actually maintain an erection. What was the dreamer noted that during this dream she felt ambivalent towards this person or this demon, as she didn't want to stay with them, but never. On the other hand, she felt that if she left him, she would be put into some kind of danger. And then suddenly in the dream, some native women, what native actually means isn't clear, but apparently some women who were not from Western society, shall we say, who came to her aid. They killed off this demon, but to be absolutely sure that the dreamer was safe, they actually enclosed her in a coffin of some kind to contain her. Now, apparently, this demon figure was very powerful and was like a vampire. But these small-bodied, and here the dreamer describes them as being African women, maybe Bantu or Hottentot or some, but small built women who were able to subdue or cast a spell over this demon and hold them put him in stasis for eternity. And there ends the dream. Now, there's a whole lot going on in this dream, but as always, we'll start by breaking things down and looking and seeing what comes up. Now, this, again, the dreamer said that what provoked these two more recent dreams was the return of an old recurrent dream which she had had since childhood, about floods and watching her school being submerged by a tsunami. Now, the dreamer also happened to mention that there were some changes going on at work, and that some of the changes were of concern to her, and that she worked with young people around the environment. And that seems to have been brought out in the dream, floods and what have you, which seem to be happening more and more often in lots of places now due to climate change. And also working in a teaching capacity with young people, it makes sense that her concerns around her work appeared in the dream as well as this school. Now, there were the recent dream it still links back to this other dream, and I'll talk about the recurring dream and why it may have been triggered by what was going on for the dreamer. But in the first of these new set of dreams, the dreamer was driving a car and suddenly found herself on an unknown path, and taking a shortcut ended up and going over a cliff, though she never actually crashed. She woke up before that happened. Now, it kind of harks back to this her work situation, in that there was the company or organization was going in a new direction, and she wasn't sure if it was perhaps the right way for her to be going along with them. And she took a shortcut and ended up at this cliff with the lights of the city below. Now, one would have assumed that she was already in the city, but she was at a high point. And distance and height can all have a role to play in a dream. So if she's looking down on the city, it would imply that perhaps that she is looking at this all from a higher perspective, rather than from being down and down in the midst of things. She's able to look at things from a higher view. So, but despite this fall off this cliff, and the woman is more preoccupied with caring for the child who's behind her, which ties in again with what's going on with her for work. The car may be going down, but what's getting larger is the moon, as if they were going up somehow, getting closer to the moon. Now, the moon has always been a symbol of the energetic feminine. Sorry, my nose is twitching at the moment. But of intuition, of the night, in a more feminine or gentle or yielding energy, if you will. So it's interesting that even as the car is going off the cliff, the moon, as the symbol of the unconscious, is growing larger. So perhaps there's something there for the dreamer about becoming more aware of the unconscious forces, whether within herself or in the larger world. Now, in the second dream, the dreamer is very disturbed by the fact that she's being attacked or raped by this devil-like creature, a demon-like creature, who wants to manage or overpower her and force her to have sex, but is unable to because he's impotent in the end. But he was like a vampire-like creature, literally trying to suck the lifeblood out of her. But it was these small women, and I'll come back to that in a second. But there's these small native women or African women, maybe Bantu, Hottentot, but very small in stature, who actually killed off this demon, and protected her by enclosing her in a coffin while they did it. It's and actually was able to subdue this demon permanently by putting him in a state of stasis or suspended animation. Now, this tribe or group of little women could literally represent the young people at some level, the young people that the dreamer was working with. They could also represent, in terms of the dreamer herself, the shadow, the undeveloped, unknown, unrecognized parts of ourselves that can be at any develop at any stage of our lives. They can be young, they can be old, they can be in between. But these are the disowned or unacknowledged parts of the dreamer herself. And I wonder if it's psychologically, if that's what's happening, that these bits that have perhaps become split off a little bit because of some kind of trauma, hence the return of these of a recurrent dream, that's been happening to her since childhood. So energetically, though, that child is still there reliving that experience. But nevertheless, they come to her rescue, and effectively bury her out of sight, so that while this demon was defeated. And my question here for the dreamer would be, who or what exactly was this demon-like figure in her life who bedevils her in waking life? Now, it would, as the conversation between the dreamer and I get continued, what we realized that it really was expressing some deeper feelings that she had with regard to the new management at her work. And that she did feel ambivalent about the changes because for various reasons, because principally that it didn't function in a way that was appropriate in terms of approach for the young people in question, particularly because they were from the Black or Asian or ethnic minority communities, and therefore the management didn't really know how to engage with those communities very well, which was, though it seemed like a good opportunity to her, she wasn't sure that it was the right way for her to go. So this philanthropic group, as it happens, that was taking over where she was working at, or becoming involved where she was working at, just it created such unsettled feelings in her that this feeling of being overwhelmed, of being swept away from her childhood, resurged and triggered these other two dreams. But what we realized is that the upshot of all of this was she didn't feel safe. She didn't feel safe. She didn't feel that she felt unprotected, and even being as well as being attacked even, and that it was only in relying on these native women, or this, if you will, her inner wisdom, that she's seen the danger and has shielded herself from it, or has stepped back from it to recognize it for what it is. So, but even in that, I would ask the dreamer here what the little Native women represented for the dreamer. I mean, Native, you think of it, things that are natural or indigenous to a place. It could also imply using our inner wisdom, our intuition. So it would be interesting to go back and find out from the dreamer what exactly these things meant. But what she took away from this was that the situation that she was in needed her to do some serious thinking, and from a higher level. Yes, she wanted to serve her community, but would she be serving her community in the best way possible in that particular scenario? And if I'm not mistaken, I believe she contacted me after some time, decided that she would move on because that just wasn't the right place for her. But the dream was not only expressing some anxieties around the situation, but also perhaps pointing in the direction that was a better choice or a more appropriate choice for the dreamer. So there you have it. Recurrent dreams, which usually keep coming up because it's an issue that's so important that the unconscious will keep reminding us of it, or sending variations on a theme. So it's like, you didn't get it the first time, okay, I'll send it to you again, and it will keep sending the message until you respond to it, or something else happens that forces you to change your position in some way. But psychologically, recurrent dreams can also signify that there's some kind of trauma, but that hasn't been resolved or worked through in some way. I mean, if you think of a trauma as a wound, yeah. So you get a wound, but instead of it to going through the normal process of healing, there's still infection in it, but there's a scab over it. So it's never really healed, and it's slowly spreading that poison underneath sometimes. And it's sometimes becomes necessary it becomes necessary to actually lance it and let that infection out so that it can heal from the inside out. But if it's never healed properly, what starts to happen is, whenever a situation that evokes those same emotions of the original trauma come up, the same feelings will resurge and can trigger recurrent dreams. That's not always the case, but quite often it's people suffering with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, will often say that, a sight, a sound, a smell, or something will trigger that fear response or fight or flight response within them, and can trigger recurrent dreams and flashbacks and what have you. So there you have it. Sometimes old dreams never really die. They just recycle themselves until and unless you address the wound and go back to the original wound to be able to heal it completely. It will leave a scar, but it won't be injecting and its poison anymore. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Have a great evening and rest of the week, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.